You know what they call it? Impeachment light. It's impeachment light. That's why, you know, with Richard Nixon, I just see it as a very dark era. Very dark, very, you don't even like to think. I don't know about you, but I'm having a good time. It's crazy. But I also know we have a great group of people behind us in the Republican Party.
No matter how much he denies it, rages against it, smears it, Donald Trump made the kind of history yesterday that he fears most. He became the third president in our country's history to be impeached, all but guaranteeing that the first sentence written about him anywhere, everywhere, until the end of time will be this. On December 18th, 2019, Donald J. Trump was impeached for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. A quick glance at his Twitter feed over the last 2 days lays bare his fury. Ashley Parker and Josh Dawsey of the Washington Post capture this moment in Trump's presidency this way, quote, "The president's furious visage, red-faced to the shade of burnt sienna, sweat beading on his upper lip, belied the image aides had scrambled to project all week of a leader in high spirits, even as he faced an historic low point. The anger has been boiling for a while." Our friend Jonathan Lemire in the Associated Press writes this, quote, "Allies in recent months have described him as seething over the prospect, taking impeachment more as a personal attack and an attempt to delegitimize his presidency than a judgment on his conduct." The aforementioned Jonathan Lemire joins us now. This idea that he thinks it's to I mean, if he's impeached and removed, Mike Pence becomes the American president, strengthening Mike Pence's first run, should he run for re-election in 2020. I mean, the only person who sought to delegitimize a sitting president is Donald Trump with the birther movement.
Sure, but that's not how he views it at all, of course. He has thought that since 2016 there have been efforts to undermine his win. He claimed voter fraud where there were not any. He claimed that the Democrats attempted to drum up the Russia conspiracy just to sort of undermine his presidency. And of course, we know there was real outside election interference. And what happened yesterday is something he has feared for a long time. As much as his political advisors have said, and he is to some degree bought in, that impeachment can be helpful politically next year, right? And his campaign, they gave a briefing to reporters last week. They showed data, how their fundraising has gone up since the impeachment inquiry started. Rally attendance has gone up. They point to their internals and say that among independents and battleground states, they largely disapprove of the impeachment effort. So that is something that perhaps, and we'll see how that plays out next year. It's too early to judge on that. But what we can judge right now is he's the third president in the history of this country to be impeached. And for someone who is so concerned about branding and so concerned about reputation, that is a deep stain on him. And we saw his fury erupt last night from the stage. He had a 2-hour and 1-minute rally, his longest of his term.
Poor people.
2 hours and 1 minute.
1 minute.
And he was indeed red-faced at times. He was quite sweaty. He was very animated. He went on a 40-minute or so rant about impeachment. This is something that has been at the forefront of his mind for weeks. And yesterday, it finally came to be. And he knows, as I wrote for The Wire today, this is now the first line of his obituary. This is going to be how he is remembered. And no matter what he does, and maybe he will be the first president impeached and reelected, but the word impeached is always going to be there.
And this brings out the worst in him, doesn't it? I mean, you know, what you saw there was, by the way, you know, who's given speeches other than Fidel Castro that went on for more than 2 hours? Look, if you're Donald Trump, you kind of want to run a little bit on, you know, It's Morning in America again, as opposed to, you know, this campaign of grievance and victimization and pure anger, and, you know, lashing out at John Dingell. There's something about this sort of thing that triggers the very worst in Donald Trump, and that's pretty bad.
Let me show that. Before everyone jumps in.
Debbie Dingell, that's a real beauty. So she calls me up like 8 months ago. Her husband was here a long time. But I didn't give him the B treatment. I didn't give him the C or the D. I could have. Nobody would have, you know. I gave the A+ treatment. She calls me up. It's the nicest thing that's ever happened. Thank you so much. John would be so thrilled. He's looking down. He'd be so thrilled. Thank you so much, sir. I said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe he's looking up. I don't know.
That was Donald Trump doing as he did with the Khan family, as he did with the widow of LaDavid T. Johnson, smearing
John McCain.
as he did with John McCain, smearing the late Congressman Dingell, whose widow, Debbie Dingell, serves in the House. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, he's an iconic congressman. He is respected on both sides of the aisle, and I think that even people in that audience, that rally audience, were taken aback. But I am mystified that anyone is mystified that the president would go this way. You know, this is the Donald Trump that we have seen over the last 4 or 5 years. So anybody that is professing, well, this was a bad moment, I have no idea why Donald Trump would do this. This is what he does when he's under pressure, when he's feeling victimized. And again, this is the Donald Trump that we're going to be seeing now, lashing out after impeachment. And the longer this hangs over his head, I think the more of these sort of unhinged moments you're going to see from him.
Yeah, certainly my colleague in the room last night said that the crowd wasn't with him on that. I mean, people, you could hear some of the groans there, but apparently in person, it was even more obvious. I mean, he's a favorite son there in Michigan. Let's remember, Michigan is a rather important state for this president's reelection chances. He won it very narrowly last time around.
I think I have some of those. I think, what, with 10,000 votes?
Yeah, 10,000 votes. And there are paths for him to do it, to be reelected without winning Michigan this time. And I know his campaign is a little more pessimistic about Michigan than some of the other Rust Belt states. But it features prominently in any path to victory here. He's been to Michigan a number of times. There's a reason why he was there last night, because they know how important it is. And something like this, you're right, it shouldn't be surprising. We have just listed the number of deceased public figures or soldiers that he has slurred from, you know, while they're in the grave, and no ability to punch back. And that's what one of the other more sort of galling things is Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham was asked today to defend, you know, why did the president say this? And he said, well, you know, the president, he's a counterpuncher.
And I
don't know how the congressman counterpunched from beyond the grave.
We're going to show that, because it is extraordinary. And I think both things that you're saying, what you're all saying is right. We shouldn't be surprised. We've seen this before. But that doesn't mean we don't hit pause and remind people that this isn't normal. This, from a spokesperson, is not normal. Watch.
Why do you think the president said that overnight?
You'd have to talk to the president about that. He was at a political rally. He has been under attack and under impeachment attack for the last few months, and then just under attack politically for the last 2.5 years. I think that, as we all know, the president is a counterpuncher. It was a very, very supportive and wild crowd, and he was just riffing on some of the things that had been happening the past few days.
He's under attack? I mean, put on your big boy panties and get in the arena. Well, what kind of excuse is that?
I'm starting to think she's not very good at her job.
Yeah. Look, we can't become numb to it, and I think that's what you were trying to say. Like, this is not normal. This is not the protocol. This is not how the president of the United States treats the office. Look, behind all the bluster, the tweets and the rhetoric and these rallies, what happened last night, that impeachment that is now the asterisk next to Donald Trump's name, has really stung him. We have to remember, last night was probably the first time he has ever been held accountable in his entire life. So I think with that, and him wanting to be a fighter and fighting all the time and going after whoever a 16-year-old, which is one thing that he did. You know, he went after all of practically all the women who have accused him of sexual assault. I mean, this is what he does. And that accountability last night, I think, really got under his skin, because no one has ever done that.
All right, after the break, Vladimir Putin weighs in on impeachment.
We made USAA insurance for veterans